and off we go. So thank you for coming today. I am so excited because Rachel Pietsch is an amazing vocal coach. She is different to a lot of the ones that I've seen in that she's about the biology of your voice as well and how to improve it that way. And we are very, very lucky to have Rachel present for us today on the learning table. So Rachel, over to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jules. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to share what is involved in the kind of voice training that I offer. So, yes, today is all about voice your brilliance, and I will be covering many and wide topics, and I think I'll just dive on in, and
Yep.
we'll just get going. So, and then I believe we'll have a question time at the end.
Yes,
So,
we will.
okay. All right, so I thought that I would just talk a little, very, very briefly about me,
Yes.
in terms of, what my background is and where I'm coming from. So I have been a singing teacher for over 30 years, and probably about 15 years into my singing teaching career, I found that I didn't feel as confident as I wanted to help every voice that I worked with. So that I did have a Bachelor of Education to teach music in the classroom. I majored in piano and voice, but I just found that it wasn't enough to give me the tools that I needed to help every voice that I worked with. I'm first and foremost a teacher, so I want to feel like I'm helping people. So yes, 15 years into my teaching journey, I discovered IVA, the Institute for Vocal Advancement, used to be
Oh,
called speech level singing, but they teach voice function, which means if you go to the physio and they look at you for the first time, they're assessing what's going on in your body. You stand up, you turn your head to the left and to the right and whatever. They're just assessing how your body moves. Well, when it comes to voice function teachers listen to what's happening in your voice. So we're listening to what's happening at the vocal cord level, the larynx level, what's happening with your breathing, what's your posture doing. There are so many things that contribute to the way that we use our voice. And ever since I've trained in this, it absolutely ticks the box for me that I feel that I can help people. It took me 8 years to receive an advanced accreditation, and that involved having to fly overseas and teach in front of a panel of master teachers. And they gave me the stamp of approval. Yes, go forth and teach. So I'm
wow.
very, very fortunate to have been skilled in this area. And now I help singers and speakers. So moving right along, I've got some interesting statistics here because we're here to talk about the speaking voice. And according to Speech Pathology Australia, around 1.2 million Australian adults will develop voice issues.
Wow.
And up to 60% of occupational voice users, such as speakers, teachers, coaches, sellers, broadcasters, telemarketers, anyone who uses their voice for their job, will experience a voice problem at least once during their career. 60%. That's a high percentage. And women are more likely to develop voice issues than men. And there are reasons for that, and I won't go into that very deeply right now. But one of the areas is because a lot of women tend to judge their own voices as not being enough, and one of those things is we tend to, when we don't feel that we're enough, we tend to not put ourselves out there, and our voice will reflect that. So yeah, just touching on that very, very briefly. Okay, so I am in the business of developing influential voices, and there are a bunch of things that get in the way of an influential voice. So we're going to go through some of those things here. So most people are unaware that their voice needs improvement, or it could benefit from improvement, or that there is an issue. That is one of the things that gets in the way of us realizing what our voice is actually capable of doing. A lot of people are unaware of how to find the help that they need, or they tend to downplay what's going on in their voice. Another thing that gets in the way are our habits in the way that we speak. Speaking monotone actually takes more effort on the voice,
Oh,
and having to hold that same pitch for a long period of time puts the voice in a very, very still position. Imagine, it's basically having a sedentary lifestyle. You're just never moving. Mumbling, not articulating your words properly. This actually affects the resonance of your voice, and I'll go into that a little bit later. Speaking too softly is also a habit, but a lot of people do tend to find that it's hard to not speak softly because that's all they're actually capable of, and a case of, believing maybe this is the voice that I'll always have. I don't know how to speak louder. Speaking too fast is another thing. And the reason why speaking too fast it gets in the way is because when we speak, we're speaking with lots of syllables, lots of combinations of consonants and vowels making up syllables. Every sound has a shape, and those shapes are made up of syllables. So if we are not articulating properly every single syllable that we're saying, things get tripped over. And the impact that has on our voice, I will go into a little bit later. Now, some voice issues that can get in the way of getting an influential voice, things like poor quality. Again, this is where the speaking soft comes in, or you might feel like you sound thin or weak or raspy, and it's difficult to get a full sound. Poor vocal technique, where you just simply don't know how to engage your voice properly. Remember, the voice is like muscles. There are muscles that run through our vocal cords, and they need to be strengthened just like any other part of our body. You may have noticed that there's a change in your voice, particularly as you're getting older. For men, we tend to, not we, I'm not a man. For men, their voices tend to rise a little bit in pitch as they get older, so their voice tends to sit a little bit higher. But for us women, our voices tend to sit a little bit lower, and we might find ourselves sort of favoring that part of the voice, and we tend to sort of go, I don't understand how to navigate this quality in my voice, and so we tend to sort of feel a little bit lost. Or you might experience a change that is related to the fact that you do speak a lot. You might be a presenter or a teacher, and you have to use your speaking voice all day, and it's starting to wear, and therefore you feel that you may need to get that looked at. So pathological issues do come into obviously having a well-rounded influential voice. And limiting beliefs, the things that we believe about ourselves has an impact on our voice. Our voice represents us. It represents our confidence. It represents our brand. It represents how we really believe about what we're saying. And it's also reflected to us by other people. So if we're feeling that lack of confidence in ourselves, our voice will actually reflect that. And a typical example of that would be, say there's a boardroom meeting, there's only one woman present, and a lot of the conversation is being dominated by the male voices in the room. And if you believe as a woman that you are less because your voice doesn't carry or project as well as a male voice, you'll tend to sit out of the conversation. And there was a really, really interesting article I read on this morning that I'm more than happy to share at some point, about how women feel in the boardroom, so to speak, and how women see that, and also how men see that, and how they're reading women in that sort of situation. Really, really fascinating. Another thing that comes into, and I don't know why I put this in limiting beliefs, but our tessitura. Our tessitura is the sweet spot in our range. So I tend to speak in this part of my range. I don't speak down here, and I don't speak up here. I speak where my voice is comfortable. Everyone has a comfortable area of their voice. Tessitura is like the classical term for this part of the voice. Others' perception of us does actually come into how we use our voice, but I think one of the most harming things is other people's criticism of our voice. I had a conversation with a lady at a networking meeting last year, and she came up to me and she said, I don't have a problem with my voice. I feel like my voice functions well, but I keep being told that my voice is too whiny by my colleagues. And I thought, how damaging is that?
Yeah.
And the confidence that it had the effect on her confidence was just, she was very capable, very smart, very articulate. But just because she was criticized just for the way she she suddenly became self-conscious about something that really is, it really shouldn't factor in. So she's like, what can I do? And one of the things I said to her was, yes, there's things that we can build into your voice to help you sound less whiny, but at the end of the day, it's really important first to accept that part of your sound is your natural sound. We can show you how to get more color into it, how to get more presence into it, but that is your natural sound. And I don't think you're whiny when I listen to your voice. So yeah, she was just being picked on for sounding higher than other people. I don't know. So there's that self-belief thing that comes into it. Our upbringing and our social cues also contribute to the way that we feel about our voice. So I have worked with a lot of people who come in for a session and they say, I love singing, or I love talking to people, but I was told to mime when I was in the school choir, or I was told to be quiet. The amount of times I've heard people tell me that they sing quietly when they're in the choir, or don't sing at all. That sounds terrible. It's just soul destroying because I think everyone has a voice that is meant to be used. So anyway, that is all about the influential voice. And what I want to do is I want to talk about what is a voice of influence, and how I see it, so that you can get an idea as to what voice function training can do for you. Oops, sorry, went to the wrong spot. Okay, I'm clicking on wrong areas here. Okay, what is vocal influence? Basically, it is something that can enhance people's first impressions of you. So when you meet people, it's one of those things that people are summing us up within the first 10, 12 seconds that they see us. And when we start to speak, the sound of our voice will be part of that first impression. Next, I just want to get you to have a look at this, because I think this is really interesting. The sound of a speaker's voice matters twice as much as the content of the message. So, like I said, when we're meeting people, we're about to, deliver the elevator pitch, and we look great, we're confident, we feel good about our subject area, but we kind of feel like our voice lets us down. And I was just talking a moment ago about accepting the way that your voice sounds. But there's also room for you to explore how to add more color and more range and more dynamic expression into our voices. And so when people are meeting us for the first time, if you can imagine the best voice that you could represent that with. I'm thinking of what's the guy who used to host QI? What's his name?
Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry. I love that man.
Yes, so yeah.
He's done a lot of audio books where he's reading stories, and you can just listen to his voice all day. And the reason is he has yes, he's born with a really, really great sound, but he really understands how to shape his words, how to use his sentence flow, how to put pauses, and how to put emphasis in so that people tune in. So there is an art to it. And this is what I help people do. And I thought I'd throw this in as well. If we think about the old silent movies, the silent movie stars were beautiful. They didn't have to open their mouths and speak. But there was a bunch of silent movie stars that when the talkies came in, they lost their jobs because their voices just didn't match the image that they could portray. And I remember seeing a movie recently where this was demonstrated, and it was very extreme. Her voice sounded terrible, but at the end of the day, it ruined her career. So there are things that we can do to improve that. So the next thing is having a really great sounding voice will also help you get your message heard, because as we just said, the sound of your voice matters twice as much as the content of your message. People aren't going to be taking in what we're saying as much if our voice isn't representing what we're saying, what we're trying to say. And therefore, it builds trust, because I would prefer to hear from someone who sounds reassuring, sounds authoritative, confident, and know that whatever they're trying to sell me, or whichever way they're trying to connect with me, that they're genuine about that, and that they are someone that I can trust. And confidence does come into that an awful lot. And therefore, it opens up opportunity. And I think that speaks for itself. In addition to listing my thing's in the way here.
Technical prowess.
Thank you. On your resume, this is something that I actually got from an article by Jack Kelly, senior contributor to Forbes magazine. And I'm just going to quickly go to my notes here to remember what I was going to say about this. I can't remember. Oh, yeah. So when it comes to leadership, no, so sorry. I haven't got it written down, so sorry. But anyway, this was part of an article that talked about the importance of having public speaking skills and how the workforce is now beginning to look for this more and more. So in addition to listing your technical prowess on your resume, you should include soft skills such as public speaking. And there's a whole list of other things, but public speaking was part of it. And this has become increasingly important in hiring decisions, as they can often be the deciding factor between two equally qualified candidates. So I'll just let you take that in and stew on it. But I think it's really important to, I think this day and age, it's very, very competitive out there. We put a lot into our resumes. We put a lot into how we look on the page. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to present ourselves in a way that gives whoever is listening to us confidence in our skills. And ultimately, it builds your confidence. So it begs the question, is it truly possible to change my voice? And like I said earlier, a lot of people think that the voice that I have is a voice that I'm born with. I've never really thought about my voice. I've never really thought about any kind of training that I might need. And it's not until people start to work with their voice that they start to realize that they have access to even more expression, longevity, the ability to create more moments and not have voice issues is actually, yeah. I've worked with a lot of people that within their first session, they're like, I just felt something different. I don't think I've ever made that sound before. So that's where I start to go, yes, this is really cool. Okay, so why voice function training? So voice function training, the way that I differ from, say, a speaker trainer would focus on your stagecraft and your mannerisms, how to put your presentation together, whereas I go into right into the mechanics of the voice. So I get to the heart of what's happening in your voice, and I help you to unlock your true voice. So you may think, like I said about that girl earlier, she felt she had a whiny voice, or she was told she had a whiny voice, but there are ways that you can open that up for it to sound less whiny without having to give over your true voice. You don't have to sound completely different or speak in a different part of your voice. And there's a lot of talk about like women, we tend to feel that we have to lower our voice a lot because, yes, it is true that a deeper sound resonates more. It tends to connect with people more. But there is a great way to go about that without having to speak down here. But I will go over that a little bit down the track. Yeah, voice function training will also help to build ease and projection and longevity into your voice. And it will increase your confidence in your speaking, and it will help prevent pathological issues. So I want you to have a take a look at it. I want you to have a take a look. I'm going to talk a million miles an hour. Please take a look at this picture. This is a faded photograph of I'm not even going to tell you what that is because I want you to have a close look at it and see if you can tell what it is. But you can already see that there is a bunch of colors in there, and there's a little thing in the center that might suggest what this is. But when I look at voices, it doesn't matter how confident you feel in your voice or whether you feel issues or not. I see every voice as a faded photograph of what they are actually capable of. So if we were to actually take a voice that is sounds really good, has no issues, but if we played with it for a little bit and got it to open up, got it to use a little bit more engagement on the vocal cords, work with sounds, get more resonance, what tends to happen is we start to, more detail starts to come in, and we can see the colors are more vibrant. And I use this example in particular, not because I'm trying to just speak to people who feel fine about their voice. This also represents people who feel that their voice is just a little bit of what it could be. It's for everyone. And I've had a well-trained voice for many, many, many years, but it wasn't until I went into speaking voice training that I was able to bring more to my speaking voice. So the way that I used to talk was around about here. I was a lot quieter, and you could see that, something is missing all of a sudden. And there was a point in my life where I started to teach out of uni. I was teaching piano at a school. I was teaching every single day. My voice got really tired, so I started to talk down here because I thought it would be a little bit easier on my voice. And I started to develop this double phonation thing that's happening right now. And I just felt like that was going to be easier on my voice. Anyway, cut a long story short, went to my singing lesson, and my singing teacher, he was based in Las Vegas. We did our session over Skype way back in the days when Skype was, first around. And he said, "What is happening with your voice?" And I said, I just explained, I've been teaching piano all day. And he said, "You've got to stop doing that right now." And he just took me through the most intense speaking training I'll never forget. And it was hard work, but I understand what you have to go through to get your voice to sound like this. And you may not be thinking about the way my voice sounds, but if you understand where it's come from, it will make a lot of sense, and you will see that it makes a lot more impact. And there are areas of my voice that I just don't habitually use because I understand that, it's not in my best interest from a vocal perspective. And there are certain things that I do with my voice that are there in place to stop or prevent issues from happening. So something like whispering, I never whisper. I never talk quietly like this. I've always got my voice engaged all the time because it will always keep your voice in good shape. Okay, so this is the way that I take people through voice training. And I base it on 3 areas: breathing, what actually happens at the voice level, and what happens at your resonance level. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that. But let's firstly talk about breathing. This is where your power is. And the breathing basically is inside our body. And I always make sure that I teach people how to arrange their body in a way that is going to help with optimal breathing. So I'm going to stand up here for a second. So a lot of people tend to, and I don't know if you can see this. Okay, a lot of people tend to, I just want you to see my chest a little bit. A lot of people tend to stand up straight and puff their chest out. And if I was working with a dancer, they often come in with their ramrod straight.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can tell, but I've got quite a sway in my back at the moment from doing that. And what happens is the breathing in the back of that happens at the back of my ribs has no room to expand. So what I do is I just go through how to stand more correctly. And I'm going to run you through it very, very quickly now. So basically what you want to do, and I know you can't see my face, but I'm still here. What I want you to do is, while you're standing or sitting, doesn't matter, is to rotate your tailbone under, and this already will take away the sway in your back. And then, and I'm just going to quickly go to the next slide here. Okay, this is the process that I talk about. That's all right, I'll skip that. Whatever your body is doing will be reflected in your voice. So if you actually have this sway back, or if you slouch, cutting off, the front of your body, I already feel that my voice is a little bit impacted. So at the end of the day, we want to be able to make sure that we are organizing our body in a way so the breathing is free, the neck is free, and everything can just get on with it normally. If we don't address this, then this is actually hard. Okay, so let's talk about the breath, the respiratory system. So you've got your tailbone tucked under. And as you do that, I want you to make sure that you don't slump your shoulders down, but you actually remain fairly erect. And then just sort of allow your shoulders just to sit wherever they're going to fall, and keep your eyes straight ahead, and just allow your body to respond to what you just did with your pelvis, with your core position. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a hand and you're going to stick it above your belly button and below your sternum, and you're going to close your mouth, and you're going to start to breathe in and out through your nose. And what you're aiming for here is movement. And what you want to do is you want to avoid taking air up into your chest because, and I'll leave you to keep breathing there. The reason we don't want air up into our chest is firstly, it stops the diaphragm from engaging. This part here, this muscle here is the diaphragm. So when you breathe in, this muscle sits flat and, oh, sorry, this muscle sits flat and pushes your organs down and your abdominal wall comes out. And if we take a shallow breath up into our chest, this gets a bit jammed. It doesn't actually descend properly. The other reason we don't want air at the top of our lungs to sit in our chest is because, firstly, it sets off our larynx, so it tends to make it sit up a little bit, which is a harder place for the voice to work. And air being stored very close to where the vocal cords are, which are just up here, vocal cords are here, that being that close, it places pressure on the vocal cords to have to valve them. So it's harder for the vocal cords to hold back that air. So if we allow that low breath, get the dissension in the diaphragm, and avoid puffing out our chest and having air come up into our chest, we can support our voice better. And you don't need to think anything more about your breath other than that. And it's also a really, really great tool for if you're about to go and speak on stage, or if you're going to have a difficult conversation, closing your mouth and breathing in and out through your nose, getting your low breath will help your nervous system to settle down. Take 3 seconds to breathe out, make the out breath longer than the in breath, and it will also help to get your mind clear again. So the low breath, I could go on and on ages about the low breath and its benefits, but that's the beginning point. And then what we do is we start to engage the voice. So at the top of your windpipe, there's this system here called the larynx, and here is where your vocal cords are. And just like our breathing, our vocal cords need to work in a certain way. They need to be engaged. Now, there's 2 of them, and they're in a V shape, and they're connected from the front to the back of your larynx. And I'm going to show you an endoscopic view of this here. So this view here is, imagine that I've chopped your head off and we're now looking down your throat. These little bits here are your vocal cords. This is your Adam's apple here, and you're facing forward that way. So this is what happens if we look at this down here. This is what happens when we're breathing. Notice the vocal cords are apart from each other. That's to allow airflow through. Phonation, as in when we create any kind of sound, doesn't matter what sound it is, the vocal cords are designed to come together. Now, there's 2 little cartilages that live on the ends of our vocal cords. You can't see them in this picture. And it's their job to respond to the message that you give them. So if you said, your arytenoid cartilages go, she doesn't want her vocal cords closed, we'll just stay put. But if we said something like, like I say to my cat when she's about to pee on the rug or whatever, that sends a message to the arytenoid cartilages, draw Rachel's vocal cords together, because she needs that togetherness to block that air that she's creating that sound with. I don't know how that happens. That's just the way our body works. But if we said something like this, a mixture of breath and sound, we're only partially closing our vocal cords. And if we're only partially closing our vocal cords, what happens is, firstly, the vocal cords can't get strong because they're not together and resisting our airflow. And secondly, because of that, muscles on the outside of our larynx are going to overcompress and overcompensate for that lack of closure. And that's where people tend to get squeezy voices. And people who tend to talk quietly and with a bit of a breathy sound, when they try and raise their volume, what's happening, rather than the vocal cords are really coming together, it's extrinsic muscles pushing in on the voice, trying to help it to come together. And the voice, will get tired from that. So to solve that, we have to build the voice from the inside out. Conversely, people who are very squeezy talkers, very tight talkers, their vocal cords are overcompressing. So we need to give them exercises to alleviate some of that pressure. So it's not a one size fits all, this process. It's very, very based on what your voice type is. And I'm going to go over that in a minute. All right, we're going to do some voice engagement. So what I'd like you to do is just imagine, I've got a cup of hot chocolate there. I love chocolate. Imagine you've got something in front of you that you really, really love, and you just want to go, Awesome. Awesome. And what you're looking for is just observing. What is it that you're observing here? Are you feeling anything in particular? Are you feeling a buzzing sensation, anywhere in your face, on your lips, or do you feel like the sound is more in your throat? So just say it again. And just observe what you're feeling. And I'll just quickly run you through what you're actually aiming for. So what you're aiming for is for your vocal cords to come together. This particular sound, when done correctly, will bring your vocal cords together, isolating them away from those pushy, squeezy muscles. And if you say it with a creak in mind, like a creaky door sound, you will achieve that. But if you put a little bit of effort into it, bit of a squeeze as if you're holding something heavy at the same time, that's too much. So you just want to get the going. And this is a really good exercise. I mean, they say humming is a really good warm-up exercise. I totally agree with that, providing that your chords are coming together in an isolated way. And the creak will actually help you do that. Moving right along, what I want to do is talk about a few of the voice types. I did mention them previously. A light voice is someone who tends to talk softly, sounds a little bit breathy, and has trouble projecting. So doing this exercise is actually really, really, really good. But sometimes that can even be a little bit hard. The vocal cords are just that weak that they can't actually make their way together. So we use other sounds like ah or ga, 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 big broad vowels that actually allow a little bit more space in the mouth and brings a little bit more assistance to the vocal cords closing. Heavy voices, so people who tend to speak with a little bit of weight on their voice, will tend to sound like they can project and talk loud, but their voices wear out a little bit too easily. And the reason is those extrinsic muscles are kicking in because everything is being so over compressed. And these kinds of voices also have difficulty in accessing a lot of dynamic range. So find it very hard to go up to there. And they just feel like they're really shouty, pulley, reachy. All of those feelings will come in. So a really good sound for that is what we call SOVT exercises, and I'm going to demonstrate and give you a chance to do one in a moment. But things like lip bubbles can help to alleviate some of that stress. So you just want to pick up the skin in your cheeks, because it's going to help everything be nice and loose. It's going to offload your larynx area, and you just want to blow. And one more thing that actually really, really helps is if you put a little bit of a dopey sound to it, because that actually drops your larynx, opens up your airways, and gives you even better access to the top. So I often use that sound for people who find it very difficult to get up to the top parts of their voice. So they might have like a greeting that they typically would say to a group of people, good morning, how are we, everyone? And find it very difficult to go, good morning, how are you? They would tend to sound more like, good morning, how are you? And that just wears you down after a while, and they just end up going, good morning, how are you? and it's like the voice becomes more and more diminished. So I get them to practice that a bit to get that going. And then I say, I want you to take that sentence. This is skipping a few steps here. I want you to take that sentence and say, good morning, how are you today? And what it does is it gives you a lot more access to that top voice. Now, I wouldn't expect someone to take that sound and go, okay, this is the way you greet people from now on. Good morning, how are you today? It's what we call an unfinished sound. And we use unfinished sound as tools like training wheels on a bike, where we just put them there temporarily to help you feel propped up for a little bit. And then And then you can get on with feeling what you need to feel. The brain gets the message, and then we start to move you towards the finished sound, which is where my voice sits. My voice is a good example of a finished sound. So I don't feel any of the descriptions that I use for the light or the heavy sound. I don't speak breathy. I don't speak compressed, and I have full access to my dynamic range, and has a lot to do with voice engagement, low breath. I have a low breath going all the time. It doesn't matter what kind of speaking I'm doing. I always use a low breath, and I also shape my vowels correctly. So vowels is how we achieve resonance. So the distance between your vocal cords and your lips, that's called our vocal tract. So when you create sound, air is colliding with your vocal cords, overcoming the subglottic pressure from underneath, and your vocal cords start to vibrate and sound waves start to travel, and they travel out your throat and your mouth. Now, I put a picture of a saxophone there because I often say to people, just imagine a saxophone. This part here is the resonant tube. All of that is carrying the sound waves that make it sound like a saxophone. If I accidentally backed over that with my car, that won't sound the same. That's going to sound quite very squeaky and very tight, and what we call splat. It's like the resonance splats. There's no fullness. The harmonic stack has just gone and it's not perceived as a good sound. And if we think about, what's happening when we blow into this instrument, if it's going to be all squished, it's going to be really hard to get air through that. So you're going to have to apply a lot more pressure. So when we don't speak with an open vocal tract, which is basically how we shape our vowels, then we're essentially shutting off our vocal tract. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have this kind of sound in their voice, and I can hear that nothing's wrong from a vocal cord level, but I can hear everything going wrong with their resonance. If only they opened up their sound, opened up every vowel, they'll notice a big difference in how their voice travels and the ease of their voice. So it's really, really important that touching on the way we say our vowels is touched on. Okay, so I'm actually going to take you through one of my favorite exercises. This is a great warm-up for tired voices that find that they just sort of need to feel that you're coming into speaking with a little bit of ease. So I actually like using a straw to do this. So I've got two different size straws here because, it does make a difference, and, you can play around with different sizes. But anyway, creating sound through a straw is beneficial as discovered by, what's his name? Dr. Ingo Titzer. He's an American voice scientist. And when he discovered the benefits of creating sound through a straw, singing teachers, speech pathologists, ENTs, people who work with voices, and particularly in a rehabilitative way, it got taken on very, very quickly. So what happens is when we're creating sound through a straw, we have to use air, and the air that's passing through the straw is only a little bit because this is really, really thin. So the air that we're producing that we're not using, that's not going through the straw, actually comes back as a back pressure onto our vocal cords. And the cool thing is, gives them a massage and it helps them to sit a little bit more square on again. And it's like recalibrating your voice, like pressing reset on your voice. So I find that if I'm working with a voice and I can hear that, this person may have been speaking all day, their voice is sounding a little bit here, I actually put them on the straw straight away, and all of a sudden they just get that freedom back, the buoyancy comes back into their voice. So it's a really, really quick reset for your voice when you need it, and you can't overdose on it, providing you're doing it correctly. So let's actually show you how to do it. And what you'll need is a straw and a drinking glass with about an inch of water in the bottom of it, because that's all you'll need. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is say, ooh, as if, I don't know, I'm just going to refer back to that hot chocolate. Someone gave me hot chocolate and I go, ooh, that's looking good. But I want you to put a little bit of a dopey yawn to it. Ooh. Ooh. And just slide up and down there. Ooh. Ooh. And you might like to think a little bit hooty, spooky, or even a bit Yogi Bear. Hey, boo-boo, we're going on a picnic. Ooh. And then you want to do that through your straw. Ooh. 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 And then you might decide that you like the feeling of that anyway, but you do need to actually check what you're feeling at this point in time. When you're making sound through a straw, remember, not all that air is going through, so it creates a resistance to that airflow coming out. So if you feel like you're having to push through, like you're having to use a lot of effort, then try a bigger straw with a bigger hole. I don't know if you can see the difference there. So yeah, just make sure that you try something that's, bigger. But if you don't have anything bigger, you can relax your lips around the straw, letting a little bit of airflow through either side of your straw. I don't know if you can see that. As opposed to but you still want to keep that thing going on there. Now, if you're feeling comfortable, and you may even like this better, we could actually do this in the cup now. And the way that I do this, plonk the straw in, between two fingers, grab your straw, and then stick your hand over the top so that you don't get splashed back because you're about to blow bubbles. And make sure that the bottom of the straw is not touching the bottom of the glass. And then do exactly the same thing, but blow bubbles at the same time. And then ask yourself the question, does my voice like that feeling? And if it doesn't, that's okay. We all work at different resistance levels, just like our bodies. And it doesn't mean that you have a terrible voice if it doesn't feel right for you. Another thing you can do is try and take your straw, rather than sitting at the bottom, you can actually take it out a little bit and have a little bit less resistance. That is also something that you can try. So what you can do with this as an exercise, once you've got yourself set up, what you can do is you can start to do slides. Now, a lot of people tend to go, they tend to go as high as they possibly can, which is good. Only go as high as you feel comfortable. But what I suggest you do first is to do incremental slides. So you're visiting every part of your range. So and always come back to the bottom. Now, if you find that really hard and you just feel tight and squeezy going to the top, go from the other direction. Start from the top and do puppy whimpers down. So and you might find that actually surprisingly easier, going straight for those high notes. So that is what I recommend that you do before you start your day, before you do any teaching or talking, and at the end of the day as well, and anywhere you need it. I tend to use a bench straw so that I don't have to reach over. You want to try and keep your neck, fairly straight. Okay, moving on. How we go for time, Jules?
I muted myself so you wouldn't hear all my funny noises as I was doing the exercises. It's 10 to 1.
Okay. All right. We've got
And Christine has to go by 1.
Okay. All right. I think I'm very close to the end now.
Just keep going.
Okay. I've got this sentence here because I would like you to, in your own time, do a bit of straw stuff, warm up on some straw stuff, get your low breath happening, get your going, do some straw stuff, and then read this sentence out loud, and just see if you feel a difference in your voice. You might even like to say this sentence before you do all of that, and then compare the difference. And if you do sense a difference, then that's just the beginning of what your voice can actually benefit from, different ways of making sound. And care of Home Speech, home.com, a speech pathology website that has a lot of these great sentences on there. Okay, Some vocal health do's and don'ts. So we already know that it's great to drink water, rest your voice when you're tired, speak clearly, avoid whispering as much as you can. Allow your voice to engage properly. Some people, actually a lot of people tend to believe that if my voice is getting tired, I probably should conserve it and do this. But what's happening is your vocal cords are parting again. And remember what happens when they part? Those extrinsic muscles will start to kick in and try and overcompensate. So you always want to speak clearly as best as you can. If you feel you're not capable of that, rest your voice if you possibly can. That would be the best thing for you. Sleep is also really good. Avoiding food triggers before a major event that you're going to be speaking for. Allergy triggers. And there is something here that I want to mention about antihistamines, like hay fever medication. Unfortunately, a lot of people have to take them to get by, but there is a dehydrating effect on our voice because of that. So I've got an answer to that. It's called a nebulizer. And in this little nebulizer I've got here, I have got 0.9% saline solution, which is basically if you were to go to the hospital and you were dehydrated, they would just put this IV straight in your arm. So it's very, very, safe. You can get it from a chemist. Put a little bit of that into your nebulizer. And what this does is I'll show you. It produces a very, very fine mist. It's just a little bit cool, and you inhale it. And what it does is, because the particles of the mist are so tiny, they penetrate your vocal cords and hydrate them. Yes, drinking water is actually really good. It needs to be in your system 3 days before you'll feel the benefit. So you need to be drinking water all the time, but this gives you immediate hydration. And so if you feel like your voice is like crackling, you're coming off a cold, or you're just dehydrated, it's winter, it's dry, this is a really, really, really good option for you. Practicing mindfulness is another really good thing to watch out for. Just pay attention to what your voice is doing and having a good work-life balance. I'm just going to move my little screen over here. Okay, don'ts. Don't push your voice when it's tired. And, sometimes that's unavoidable. Just have a backup plan later to do some straw stuff, rest later, get some vocal rest where you possibly can. Through a throat infection, look, I work with people who are performers who have to perform through a throat infection. So there are things that I can get them to do. A lot of straw work, a lot of this nebulizing. But if you can avoid talking, just try and give your voice as much rest as possible. But at the end of the day, it's good for the healing process for your voice if you can do some gentle stuff. So the straw stuff is really good. The lip bubbles are really good. Back in the day when you had a sprained ankle, the doctor used to say, put it up and don't walk on it till it's better, but it would stiffen up. So these days, if you sprain your ankle, the doctor says, go home, ice it, but start moving it as soon as you possibly can so it doesn't stiffen up and it helps the healing process. So you don't want to overload your voice when you've got a throat infection. You just want to give it gentle stuff to do. And I got this from Melbourne-based speech pathologist, very, very well known, Debbie Filand. She said that even the vibrations on the vocal cords is actually part of the healing process for when you're coming out of a throat infection. So it's okay to talk, and it is okay to engage your voice, so long as you're not pushing or overloading it or expecting too much of it. And of course, no whispering. And this excessive speaking and shouting, that comes into it. Avoid clearing your throat. I come across so many people who clear their throats simply because there is a lack of awareness that they're not engaging their voice properly. If you engage your voice properly, you will feel less inclined to clear your throat. Another reason why people clear their throat is because on the tail end of a throat infection, the habit just formed because you're trying to clear the mucus away. So my advice is to A, stop doing it. B, ignore the mucus you feel is screaming at you, and swallow and a little bit of a cough. drink some water and get on with your day. Avoid, avoid, avoid. Because what that's doing is taking your vocal cords and they're slamming them together. And that's what we call vocal trauma. And this, if you do that too much, you can end up creating some issues. Yes, and there's other things here that I recommend. Excessive alcohol, not good for the voice. Excessive smoking and drugs. One thing that I want to really point out here is the lozenges. A lot of us are taking, we have to suck on the lozenges to get us through the cold and the throat infection. But ones that contain menthol, eucalyptus, or peppermint are dehydrating for our body and for our voice. So if you need them, fine, but get on the nebulizer as quick as you possibly can. Okay. And thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, that has been so good. Let me just stop the